Hello, Hajduk Blades here. Welcome to part 2 of Pimp my bushcraft knife. I'm going to start things off with mounting a filing or a grinding jig, and I'm going to start grinding the blade. I'm going to flat grind it at first and leaving a thicker edge because the final grind I want it to be convex, a very thin convex actually. I'm carefully grinding it, making sure that I don't have any mistakes. As you grind it, I find it better to go slow, and as you can see, I dunk it in water regularly so that I don't ruin the heat treat. You can actually see very easy if you ruin the heat treat, if you burn the metal, because the color changes. After doing a couple of passes on the left side, I find that the jig that I'm using is kind of thick and messes up my grind, so I progress to a slimmer jig, and I start correcting the grind. After the grind is done, the flat grind is done, I'm going to progress to a slack attachment to finish the convex. I'm going slow as well because I find it best to go slow and regularly check what you are doing. I'm progressing to a finer belt. I think it's a 400 grit. And just finishing up the grind. After the grind is finished, I'm just going to start and hand sand it. Not going to go crazy on the hand sanding because I'm going to etch it in ferric chloride. Here I'm building a jig where I'm using a piece of leather to help me hand sand the convex grind. It's nothing fancy, but it works very good. Just checking that everything is okay. After the hand sanding is finished, I'm going to make a little hole in the tank to help me with the etching part of the knife construction. And here I'm correcting the sharpening choil, because after I made the plunge lines, the old sharpening choil just didn't match with the new shape of the blade. And going to the ferric chloride. This part I'm just making a mock-up of the tang, correcting it with a Dremel tool, which actually is not a Dremel, it's a Proxon. I find the Proxon are better than the Dremel. Totally recommend it. After the ferric chloride is done and neutralizing it, I'm just going to buff it. And the buffing and the ferric chloride give a working finish that I find very interesting. I use it all the time, and the blade actually doesn't scratch as easy and it's I just like this finish. Here I'm just measuring the parts and the materials that I'm going to use to build the tank. After this I'm just removing the outer layer because I want the two-part epoxy to stick very well to the parts. Just cleaning everything with acetone, making sure there aren't any grease spots. Here I'm mixing the two-part epoxy very thoroughly. Here I'm going to use a trick that I use also when I glue my liners to wood or my cart or everything. You'll see in a minute. I'm just going to, after I put everything together, I'm going to use a plastic bag so that the epoxy stays pretty much in the same place and doesn't go all over the place. Yeah. Using C-clamps to tighten everything. And leaving it for 24 hours to cure. Apparently 24 hours have passed, so starting to prepare the tank material, to clean it. Just marking where the tank is going to be. And using the bandsaw to cut the profile. And using the Proxen again to finish it. Just at this point I'm going to check everything and double check it and see that everything fits perfectly. Just correcting the tank and cleaning it. Checking that everything is okay. I'm marking where the pins are going to be because I'm not going to use the previous holes, and using a carbide drill bit to drill the holes, especially this one because it's on the part of the tank where the steel is very hard, because this part wasn't heat up like the end part of the tank. I'm drilling the holes, and now preparing the handle material. Here I'm using some G10. And drilling the holes in the handle material. Now I'm marking where the shape of the blade is going to be, and I'm going to cut it to shape, or in this part, in this case, sand it to shape. After everything is done, I'm just going to put everything together and finish the front part of the handle, because after I mount the blade I'm not going to have access anymore to it. And here I just made a boo-boo, so I'm going to finish to fix it with duct tape. Yeah. So always be careful when working with sharp things. As you can see, even though I didn't cut myself in this blade, after I cut myself, I put a protection on the blade. So yeah, checking everything fits, and now I'm starting to sand the inside of the scales, preparing the epoxy, and I'm going to start to epoxy everything together in a minute. This part I'm just finishing and cleaning the parts, because everything has to be sanded, so the epoxy has where and how to adhere to the parts. Now I'm just cleaning everything so I don't have grease spots or dust, so using acetone to clean everything. Carefully sanding everything. And now I'm just cleaning the tang extension on. I don't know how it's called, this part in English, but you get the idea. Here I'm using a little trick that you're going to like. I'm just putting a piece of paper inside the tube, so epoxy doesn't get into it, and after I glue everything together I'm just going to take the paper out. Using Loveless rivets again. I'm just in love with Loveless and Corby rivets. Just tightening everything together, and I'm going to use here a couple of MDF pieces to just squish the tang inside, and tightening the Loveless rivets. And now I'm just cleaning everything with acetone. This part is actually very important, so you clean it thoroughly. After I clean everything, I'm just going to clean the tools as well, and this is pretty much the end of part 2. I hope you enjoyed it, and like and subscribe, and stay tuned for part 3.